Joe, thanks for joining us. This is your third year as director. What changes have you seen or made over the 3 years that you were most pleased with?
Our big emphasis over the last 3 years has been to introduce a sense of contemporary Asia, or what is happening now in the 21st century across many of the countries across the Asian region. We started that immediately in 2015 with really fun and accessible works like Miss Revolutionary Idol Berserker from Japan, and we're keeping that momentum going this year in my third edition with a big suite of work from right across the region. It's our biggest festival to date. It's our 11th year, and finally in our third year we're really starting to see a very big and wide take-up across the Adelaide community coming in to really engage with this as a major arts festival on the national calendar.
Whilst there's no unique country that's focused, Singapore has a major component. Tell us a little bit about that focus, and in particular the major work of the About Hotel.
Look, Singapore is ripe with very exciting artwork at the moment because there was a lot of government support towards recognising and celebrating 50-year anniversary of Singapore as an independent nation back in 2015. So I've spent quite a bit of time over there looking at visual art exhibitions, dance works and theatre works over the last 18 months or so. A real highlight of that has been Hotel, a significant theatre work by Singapore's most acclaimed theatre company, Wild Rice. Hotel actually looks at 100 years of history in the Singaporean region. It starts in 1915 and goes right through to 2015. The title, Hotel, might suggest the location of the setting of the work, which is actually inside a hotel. And while the hotel is never named, it's quite a famous hotel, 3 stories high with excellent cocktails. So most people may well figure out the setting of this iconic hotel. What's really fascinating about this, although it's 5 hours long, it's in 2 parts, which means you can see it over 2 separate nights, or you can come in on the weekend and spend the whole day watching it and have a dinner break in the middle. And the way that the narrative has been structured is that there's individual chunks set 10 years apart. So it's almost like 11 25-minute scenes that span 100 years. And if you're into set design and costume, it's a really fun experience because you'll see the decor of the hotel change over 100 years, which is quite fascinating. But really, this is a fun, accessible theatre piece that's full of emotion and filled with over 100 different characters, played by a touring company of around 27 people, and there's around 12 languages spoken in this work as well.
That's obviously one of your select shows in the festival director's past. Tell us some of the others that still have some seasons to come.
Look, another really exciting work is The End by Kichiro Shibuya. It's the world's first virtual pop opera with no human beings actually singing or playing the music. It features one of the biggest pop stars from Japan, and she's not real. She's actually a digital creation, or the technical term is a Vocaloid. Her name is Hatsune Miku, and when she performs her pop songs in Japan, she'll play to 20 or even 30,000 seat stadiums to adoring fans. Lots of young girls like to dress like her with her green flowing hair, and lots of boys actually are in love with her. And she's a real cultural icon for Japan. In the same way, we look at Australian icons like koala bears being part of our tourist package to foreigners. Miku herself is a cultural icon in Japan of that scale. And while she's known for singing short 2 or 3 minute pop songs about breaking up with your boyfriend, Kichiro Shibuya was very interested in her and what her potential was in terms of performing an actual opera. So he worked with a big team of creatives to prepare a libretto, compose a score, and put on one of the most complex multimedia installations to showcase Miku that's ever been presented. The libretto is absolutely stunning, and it's very much about Miku investigating inside of herself whether or not she's really a human being, or is she a construct? Does she belong alongside of humans, or is she in some entity or other universe of her own? And as she starts to become self-aware that she's not actually human, she then starts to turn towards death, and she looks at the idea of what is death, and how come humans get to experience this opportunity, and will she ever experience death, or will she be stuck in an eternal void on her own for the rest of eternity when all humans are gone? So it's quite a philosophical, insightful work.
After Utopia is the main visual arts item in this year's festival, the Samstag, I'm interested in this concept of the ideal of Asian contemporary art. Can you talk a little bit about what can people look forward to in that context?
The After Utopia exhibition was exhibited at Singapore Art Museum in 2015 as part of the 50-year anniversary and celebrations for the country, and I went over to have a look at that, and I was immediately struck at how bold the gallery's vision is for representing contemporary art from across Southeast Asia and wider Asia in general. A lot of museums around the world gravitate towards, that traditional Western canon of collection with impressionists and classic works. And Singapore Art Museum, which is of course funded by their government, thought, look, we're the heart of Southeast Asia, and we need to think about our role in terms of being a major gallery in this region slightly differently. And they took it upon themselves to really build up their own collection of contemporary Southeast Asian art, and that meant commissioning a lot of artists across the region and acquiring work of significance from across the region. And now they house one of the largest contemporary art collections of Southeast Asian artists anywhere in the world. After Utopia reflects a lot of the thinking and philosophy behind many of these exciting contemporary artists from across the region. One of the big highlights from this exhibition is called La Bomba. It's from the Philippines, and it's actually these huge glitter bombs that are hanging from the ceiling of Sam Stag. So it's kind of this fusion of the idea of bombs and war and corruption and excess in terms of not just military, but in terms of party and disco and some of those traditional icons from the Philippines.
You also have 3 new pieces by the Australian Art Orchestra under the banner of Meeting Points. Explain those.
Meeting Points is a personal favourite of mine for this festival. It came about through a series of conversations with the artistic director of the Australian Art Orchestra and myself, Peter Knight. We'd both been very interested in a Chinese-Australian musician who's living here in Australia now, Mindy Wang. Mindy originally was a traditional guzheng player from China, and then she moved over to London and started playing in the avant-garde scene, and actually ended up touring with Damon Albarn and the Gorillas as a guzheng player before relocating to Australia. And Peter and I had both been talking to Mindy about how we might provide her with an opportunity to compose her own work and perform that in a festival context. And using that as a benchmark, we started to build up this idea of a trilogy. And I'd been working with Kichiro Shibuya on the end, and Shibuya had also been really interested in starting to compose an opera for a physical android. It would be the first chamber opera for an android ever produced, but he couldn't find an orchestra to do it because it was such a strange and ambitious concept. And I knew Peter so well, and it was right down his alley. So I said to Peter, look, if we've got Mindy here, and we've got Shibuya here with this android, we've got this idea of the guzheng as a traditional instrument from China and the android as cutting-edge technology from Japan. And then Peter jumped in and said, well, actually I'm also doing this project with Bail Dong from Korea, who's a traditional pansori singer, and he's been collaborating with an indigenous musician, Daniel Wilfred from Arnhem Land. And so all of this just fell into place with this idea of traditional instrument going avant-garde from China, fusion between traditional Korean and traditional indigenous singing from Australia, and then this view of the future and cutting-edge technology from Japan.
And this Sunday, God willing, the Moon Lantern Festival. Sometimes the gods don't smile upon it weather-wise, but what new and exciting stuff can we expect on Sunday?
The Moon Lantern Festival this year is back in Elder Park. It's an exciting event. It's now, after 2015, been recognised as a major cultural event in the Adelaide City Council cultural calendar, which means that we have fencing and security just to monitor attendance so that everyone can have an enjoyable experience. We have around 36 major lanterns, where we have over 1,000 people carrying lanterns, and we're expecting audiences of around 30,000 people, depending on how the weather goes. The live music will be performed by a group from Singapore called SA Collective. They're actually a fusion of Chinese, Malaysian and Australian indigenous music all meshing together to create a very unique sound, and we thought that really captures the essence of what Moon Lantern Festival represents, which is Australia and Asia coming together in a collaborative way. So I'd encourage everyone to come down. The gates open at about 5 o'clock.
Well, Joe, thanks for all of that. Well done on another exciting program, and clearly your enthusiasm for the program has not diminished over 3 years.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.